Okay, I hope that you now see me. Sorry for this small interruption in the service. Once again, if I didn't tell you before, I live in the mountains quite far out into the wild, so sometimes we suffer a few of these disconnections, but it's quite okay. Nothing to be worried about. All right. So again, I used to be an atrophy controller in the past, a job that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I will be talking today to you to see if maybe that's something that you should consider for your future. Okay, the first question I received, because today we're also going to change a little bit the way in which we operate. Instead of putting all the questions, all the audience questions at the end, we will I will be answering these questions, all the questions I received, straight during the show and not by saving some time at the end. All right, so the first question I received was, what are the qualities to become an atrophy controller? All right, well, that's a very good question, and that's actually one of the most frequent questions that I receive, of course. The most important qualities to become an atrophy controller, I would say, is there are just 2 or 3 main things that are important. But I would say that what is most important is to be able to finish what you start. Because whatever happens in your day job as a controller, sometimes you will see that complicated things happen. Things for which you think, oh my god, I've never seen this before, I'm not ready to handle this situation. Well, if the aircraft are in front of you, you're working real time, it means that you're going to have to do it. Now, this may sound a little bit frightening, but don't worry, it's not happening that way. Of course, when you become an atrophy controller and you're qualified to do that job, it means that we, and when I say we, I mean your employer, your colleagues, are all certain that you received all the proper training and all the tools and everything that could be done to enable you to work confidently, comfortably, and also with a certain level of peace of mind, of course. Okay. Another quality that's necessary to become an atrophy controller is to be able to formulate your thoughts in speech clearly and without hesitation. Now, you may think, wow, this guy is really incredible because he's telling me he's been an atrophy controller, and when he speaks to us on the webinars, he always like, yeah, okay, I know my own fault. Another quality that's very important for atrophy controllers. But it's completely different, of course. When you talk to aircraft, when you talk to pilots, actually you don't talk to the aircraft but to the pilots. When you talk to aircraft, when you talk to pilots, sorry, you're using another form of language, and you're talking about operational things only. All right, you're not talking to a vast audience of people from various backgrounds. You're talking to professionals, or possibly to hobbyists, or to private pilots, or to sport pilots, whoever they are, but people who have received also a specific training in understanding operational, this very particular, peculiar, operational language. So it means that you will have learned to talk slightly differently, in another way, using different words, different expressions, still in English, all right? But then different than those you use in plain language, in plain speech. As I said, Another very important, and that's one of the capital traits of an air traffic controller, is to know your own limits, to accept them, to endorse them, to embrace them. You have to be able to say at some point, no, this is no longer for me, I need help. You have to be able to call for help, to sit on your pride, if you see the image. Forget that you're a professional or whatever people think you are, and call for help, ask one of your colleagues to come and help you. And that's also not always easy to do, I know it. I know that we still live in a very, don't take me wrong, macho world. We live in a world where appearances have a lot of have huge importance, basically. And air traffic control is not a role in which appearances matter. Okay. What is very important in that is that basically you will have to be able to do a self-assessment of your own capacities, of your own skills, and say every day when you go to work, okay, I'm good to do this today, I feel well, it's all okay, and I'm happy, and I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna do that job all right. And if one day you don't feel well, if you feel that it's too much traffic for you, if it's just too complicated, there you also need to be able to be realistic and say, no, I'm not okay. I'm either sick, I don't feel good enough to go into work today, or the situation is too complicated. I need help from a colleague. I need help from somebody else. What I was saying, I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, but when I finished my training as an air traffic controller, well, I didn't really finish it. You actually never finish it all too much. But when I finished the first step of my training, one of my instructors addressed the whole group of people and said, okay, congratulations, it's very nice that you passed the exams and everything. Now you're going to go to the operational training, the on-the-job training. But whichever position you reach in this company or in any company, whichever control position you sit at, we are all but qualified learners. And this is a very important message for everybody out there, because I know I will repeat myself, but for those of you who didn't watch the previous webinars, it's very to realize that pride doesn't have room in this job. And it's very important that you dismiss all constructed ideas about how good you are, / you should be, / people expect you to be. Just do your best all the time. And when you feel that it's getting too complicated, or if things are getting out of hand, that's the right moment to call for help. Okay, there is no shame in calling for help, whatever you do, even as a pilot. Okay, this is extremely important. This is vital. I've heard people saying those who can't do teach, which is, according to me, a major misconception of the aeronautical world as it is today. And I think that we all work towards a common goal. And okay, nobody's perfect, I completely agree. But I also think that no position has more merit than another. If any of you read the blog that we posted this morning, which was about a fuel incident at the airport where I used to work, and that we had to send out a rescue team of firefighters. Well, we always say, I mean, in the tower that we work as a team with everybody else, including the pilots, including everybody who works at the airport. This is all teamwork. And there is not one more position, there's not one position more important than the other, basically. This is teamwork, okay? And in that team, you also find instructors or on-the-job trainers, which are very good people, people who are there to share the knowledge they acquired. And I think that it should also be reminded to everybody that every link of that chain is important. Okay. Now, practically, how can you become an air traffic controller? Well, there aren't so many different ways, actually. It depends basically on where you are in the world. In many countries, an air traffic control position is something that you can find with a national authority or a company created by the state somehow. In some cases, it's restricted to nationals, to citizens of that very country. Or, for example, in Europe, it is in many cases limited to citizens of the European Union. But also sometimes, because in some countries it's illegal to do that, what the ANSP says is that, okay, it's open to everybody, but one of the requirements to access the job is to be able to talk, to speak the local language, or one of the local languages, one of the national languages. That is very possible. For example, it's the case in Germany, or here in Spain, it is also the case. I know that, of course, for example, in Slovakia or in Belgium, it's also the case. Now, there are many ways to become an air traffic controller, and you will see later, I will talk to you about what you can do with an air traffic controller's license. But the most important is if you're really interested into that career, into that path, go take a look who's taking care of air traffic control where you live, in the country where you live, and look them up, Google them, and on their career website you will inevitably find the path to becoming an air traffic controller in your country. The next question I received is, what's the training like? Is it a difficult training? Now, yes, the training is difficult. You could see it as difficult, but it's a whole voyage, if you want. It starts with, in many cases, a selection. So basically, before you attend any kind of training, you will have to go through selection exams organized by the employer, by the company who runs the air traffic control service, air traffic control system. And then, if you pass that selection, you will go to training. Now, training happens in different stages. The first stages, in some cases, because it also changes, it also varies depending on the country, but usually we could make a gross summary saying that the first stage will be initial training, where you will basically learn to be a generic air traffic controller. So you will learn about regulations, about weather, about navigation techniques, about technology, about radio, about communications. There are many subjects. And then, once you succeed that phase of the training, you will go, in some cases, to specific training, which is basically making you become what you want to be. And there you will choose between a tower controller, an approach controller or an ACC controller or any combination thereof. Now, if you don't know the difference between these, you can go take a look in the other videos of this channel. You will find there our explanations about all these different units and services. All right. I hope everybody is still following, because the internet is a little bit wonky. All right. Now, after specific training, then you will receive a transitional training. Transitional training means you will be introduced to the operations, to the operations in the unit where you will be assigned. So basically, you will still receive simulator training, but this time no longer on a generic airspace. You will be trained on the airspace in which you will work. And then after that, you will go for the on-the-job training with live traffic. But I will come back. I will come back on that a little bit later. Now, the second part of the question is it difficult? It's not super easy. That's true. But it's also not unattainable. It's not impossible to succeed. A good way to succeed, I mean, what to do in order to succeed is a good command of the English language is, of course, a really, really important asset. If you speak good English, it will help you tremendously. Why do I say that? It's because of the whole communication part. Now, when you will be doing your initial and or specific training, you will sit at a simulator position, and you will already talk to simulated aircraft. During that training, the learning curve is really, really steep. That's true. But it's so steep because at the same time you have to learn air traffic control tactics, air traffic control technique, and apply these things in English, which may not be your native language. So for all of you non-native speakers out there, practice English as much as you can. This is a really tremendous help when it comes to air traffic control training. Apart from that, of course, there's a theoretical training. Theoretical training is no different to whatever theoretical training you've ever received. Start studying from day one, and basically you will succeed the theory exams. That's it. There's really nothing else to say about it. Everything will be explained to you. You will receive manuals and everything. It's really not that difficult if you put in the required amount of personal work into it. If you study correctly, no worries. No worries at all. Now, the last part of the training, as I said, the on-the-job training, is in front of live traffic. So it means that once you succeed the previous phases, you will be sent to your unit. You will be introduced to your future colleagues, and you will be assigned one or more on-the-job training instructors, which will also probably your future colleagues. So it's a good time to socialize with these people, to make friends with them, and to learn, to be open to learn from their experience, because on-the-job training is all about learning from the experience of your colleagues. I've been an on-the-job training instructor for years, and it's maybe one of the parts of my career that I enjoyed the most, I don't know if some of my former colleagues will watch this, and if you do, hey guys, I'm really happy to see you, or to talk to you once again. And for all of you who've been through OJT with me, it was really a pleasure. I really had a blast working with you. Yeah. Succeeding in on-the-job training is all about being open-minded. It's all about, and okay, you will say, yeah, he's saying that to everybody, and yeah, but it's true that if you're willing to take the advice and listen to the instructors that you have, it's not that difficult, okay? What we like, and I'm saying we, but maybe I should say I, but I know from experience that what trainers like is when students do not try discounting their mistake. When if you make a mistake, it's okay. You're there to learn. Trying to find excuses for your mistakes is really not the good way to go. Embrace your mistakes, and I would even say cherish them, basically, because you make mistakes, you're going to learn. You're going to learn a lot more than if you didn't make any. Believe me, as a trainee and later on as a controller, I still made mistakes. Everybody does. It will happen to you, of course. And my experience of that is that you learn so much from your mistake that really I'm not saying you want to do them, but you want to make mistakes, but it's still a valuable lesson every single time. Succeeding the OJT is all about staying open-minded. All right. Now there are other things that will come into account, of course, but that I will talk about a little later because that will also apply to the general career as an air traffic controller. Being an air traffic controller is a super job, as I said before. But many people ask me, and that's one of the questions I received, how can I make sure that I'm going to be a good controller, a safe controller, however you word it? Well, it's not that difficult actually. Being a good air traffic controller or a safe air traffic controller basically lies on three things. First one is communication. Be able to communicate. Be able to express your thoughts clearly and in a standardized way. Know the phraseology. Stay as close as possible to what you've been taught in your communications course. That's also valid for the pilots, by the way. By doing that, not only you will make sure that everybody understands you easily, but also you will keep your workload, your mental workload, to a minimum, because doing what you have been taught, repeating what you have been taught, is the easiest thing to do. So if you're able to communicate with pilots without having to think about it, it's going to save you a lot of effort. And that's all brain power that you will be able to use for the rest of your work, which is a huge asset, believe you me. The second thing is, and maybe some of you will be surprised, but remain humble. Try to listen to and understand the others as much as you can. This is one way of working that kept me out of trouble for years. Of course you will tell me, Yeah, but we also need technique and tactics and what. Yeah, that's true. Absolutely true. You know, when you have a tight sequence, when I say a tight sequence, so it means like a lot of arrivals together. Let's say that over 30 minutes, I remember once accommodating 17 arrivals on 30 minutes, which is quite a lot, less than 2 minutes between two aircraft. Well, in the conditions in which we were, of course, it all depends on runway configuration, and there are many things to take into account when calculating a runway capacity. But okay, in the situation I was, 17 arrivals in 30 minutes was quite a lot. What I think kept me safe there was listening to what the pilots had to say. Because if you're listening with intent, I hope you know what I mean. Hi, Fred. I'm happy to see you here. Cool. If you're listening with intent, it's a very good step, because what's going to happen is that you will not need repetitions. You will be more efficient in the way you communicate with the pilots. And then the third major asset to be a proficient, to be an efficient controller, is the ability to close the door behind you both ways. When you enter work and when you leave it. When you come from home and you enter work, try to visualize it this way. Put everything that happened at home in your backpack and close it and leave it outside. And the same happens when you leave work. Put everything that happened at work in another backpack or in your locker, whatever, and leave it there. When you close the door behind you, leave what's on one side on that side. Okay? I've seen many colleagues coming into work worried with problems of their personal life. I've seen many colleagues going back home with in their head what had happened at work that day. And I know it's very easy to say, of course, but these are interferences, if you see what I mean. Bringing your home issues at work means that you won't be 100% focused on what you have to do, and then even though it might seem as you are, if somewhere in the back of your mind you still have, yeah, but I still need to pick up the kids from school and it's going to be real tight, then you will all your shift be thinking about the colleague who's going to replace you, saying like, I hope he's going to come on time. It would be great if he was there a little bit ahead of schedule, because it's really super tight for me to get to school to pick up the kids. It's really a very bad idea, especially in the last 45 minutes of your shift. You will be extremely inefficient because you will be thinking of your kids and about being on time to pick them up instead of the aircraft in front of you. Air traffic control is a job where you need to be focused, and I reckon that I admit that it's a very difficult task, especially when you don't have a lot of work. It's actually the most difficult time to be an air traffic controller is when you have almost no traffic. It's when all the problems happen. It's when not all, but most incidents happen. Because managing to stay focused, even when you have virtually nothing to do, is what requires the highest discipline, the highest mental discipline. And if you're somebody who bores easily, then maybe you either have to work on it or consider doing something else, because this is really a job And again, this is going to be like an exaggeration, but one of my instructors, when I finished my training, told me, "You'll see, Jeff, super guy, Tony Hollins, the guy was a former Royal Air Force pilot, splendid gentleman, told me, you'll see, Jeff, air traffic control is about 90% boredom and 10% panic." And he was, okay, there is an exaggeration, the figures are not like that, but they're not too far either. And I still think about it and say, well, the more I see it, the more he was right. But the most difficult part of it is that through the 90% boredom, you have to stay focused, because you have to realize that once you finish training, once you finish all these stages of training that I talked to you about, you'll be a little bit overtrained for the job you will actually have to do, because there will be many hours you will spend at the control position with far less traffic than what you can handle, what you're able to handle. And in considering that, you will say, yeah, okay, it's super easy. I've been trained to work with 15 aircraft at the same time. Now I have 2. What can happen? I used that joke once, and I published it recently on Facebook, and it attracted quite a lot of attention, I have to say. But once I was finishing up my on-the-job training, I used that really funny joke. I was very proud of it back then. Okay, here I was working with a few aircraft, and my trainer pointed out 2 aircraft, asking me, okay, what separation do you have? What form of separation do you have between these 2 aircraft? Just to lead you into this, there are various forms of separation, which can either be longitudinal or in time or in distance, lateral, vertical. We all have separation minima we have to respect. And so my OJTI asked me, okay, Jeff, between these 2 aircraft, what separation are you applying? And I didn't exactly know what to say, and I said, okay, listen, I'm kind of busy right now. Let's consider it statistical separation. He said, what? What do you mean statistical separation? I said, okay, look, sky is big, airplanes are small, there's a big chance that nothing will happen, all right? Let me work now. And yeah, it's of course overdriven, it's of course exaggerated, but when you don't have a lot of traffic, it's that moment where you tend to not literally fall asleep, but let your brain disconnect a little and start thinking of other things, playing a crossword. I saw people knitting, or people playing video games. I actually had that colleague. That's super. Okay, this is of course not that situation, but just to show you how people can be passionate. I had this guy. This was one of my best friends at work. When he was on a break, so we would usually work like that, like 40 minutes one position, 40 minutes another, and then 40 minutes a break. And during his breaks, this guy, what he did is that he went to the internet, and he used to play an air traffic control simulation game online. So I said once, hey, listen, guy, if you really want to keep on doing this, you can I can take a break. I can think of other things to do, and you can work instead of me. That's that is really fun. Okay. Now, let's get back into the more practical side of things. One of the questions I received, and this was quite a daring one and quite an interesting one. What are the pros and cons of being an air traffic controller for your private life? Well, okay. Now, I'm sorry if air traffic controllers are watching me and they don't agree with me, but this is a personal view on things, okay? And I'm not going to name any figures here because it's different in every country, but I think personally, this is just my private personal opinion, that the job of air traffic controller still pays you a rather huge amount of money compared with other jobs. Okay, I understand that it's a very tough job, that it's a very demanding job in terms of quantity of work you have to provide, quantity of mental work you have to provide. It's also a very high responsibility job. But it's pretty well paid, I have to say. And I understand that controllers who watch me will say, yeah, but in that unit or in that country or there, they're much better off. Yeah, okay, it's true. It's true that it's not ideal everywhere, and I completely, my heart goes out to everybody there and says, okay, I'm not judging, but compared with non-aviation jobs, we still have to admit that um, it's quite a good job, financially speaking. Another good pro would be that um, this one depends a little bit on the organization of work where you are. But when I worked as an air traffic controller, rostering was extremely flexible. It's very um, convenient, and you could actually exchange shifts between colleagues. You could you could make particular requests for such or such day in the month, saying how you would like to work in the morning or in the afternoon or in the night. It was rather comfortable because you could pretty much turn it around your private life as you saw fit. Now, maybe it changed since then, and maybe it's not the case everywhere. Now, I know it's not the case everywhere, but still, not working every day the same hours is quite an advantage also, because it gives you freedom at times when the majority of the population is at work. You can very well imagine going grocery shopping to the supermarket a Monday at 9 a.m. or at 10 a.m. when it's virtually empty. It's very comfortable. Just saying. Now, the next one is either a pro or a con, because this is a little bit more of a touchy issue. After a few years of being an air traffic controller, you kind of become jaded with your everyday life. When I say jaded, I mean not so many things matter. Things that seem to be extremely important will look maybe less important to you because you just handled thousands of passengers in your day. And it can pretty much tick off the other people living with you, sharing life with you. Because we once had this thing at home where I just got back from work, and something happened at home. I don't remember what it was really. I mean, just as I was saying, not important. And then I think, I don't remember who told me, like, but how can you not care about this? And it's not that I didn't care, but okay, it's there are situations in life where you can just say, well, nothing we can do about it, and just try to solve the problem in another way. And then I had the question, how can you not care about this? And I replied, look, like this. And that pretty much like ticks off many people. It's very disturbing for non-air traffic controllers, or for people who are not subject to the same level of work intensity as we are. A huge pro, according to me, again, maybe it changed since then, as apparently the rostering did. But what I loved, and this is something that will never change in me, is how close you get to your fellow air traffic controllers, how close a team you become. I like to say that there are things that I know about my colleagues that maybe their own family doesn't know, because working in a such high intensity environment brings you so close to your colleagues. that you, how can I say this? I'm not saying you become intimate with them, but almost. Let me give you this example. There was this guy working at the same unit as I, super friendly guy. It's like okay, again, one of my very good friends there, and he was super kind. But the pilots feared him a lot because sometimes, occasionally, it would happen that he used a very dismissive tone of voice, a very dismissive way of speaking. He might even sometimes sound a little bit brutal, but that's another question. And yet, this is the guy that was like, he was super friendly, and we had tremendous fun working together. We played video games off work, we played video games together. Super guy. And I knew him so well, and I believe it also worked the same way around, the other way around, sorry, and also with other colleagues whom I noticed, that by the words he used, or by the way in which he communicated with pilots, the tone in his voice, I could say, okay, now he's becoming overloaded. I'm going to help, without him even asking anything. I could just stand up, go sit next to that guy, and say, okay, let's do this together. This is one of the beauties of that job, is that you get to know people so well that cooperating becomes like a second nature, because it's a very important part of the job, of course. You will be working in a team. Okay, relationship with colleagues are extremely important, and really, we all have in a team, we all have our favorite or least favorite people. It's natural. It's always like that. But even with the people that you like a little less, you will see quickly that you still manage to build a working relationship that's quite healthy, actually. I ended up inviting the whole team, my whole team, to my wedding, for example. Regardless of how much I like these people, everybody was invited. You see, that's how it worked. Now, we're late. I'm sorry. We're going to have to wrap this up. A last question that I received, and this is a very interesting one, and I'm really sorry that I don't have a lot of time to talk about it, but that's, can I work anywhere in the world with my license? The answer is a little bit complicated there, because it's a yes and no situation. What I can tell you is that holding an air traffic controller's license will open many doors. There are many countries to which you will be able to go say, okay, look, this is my paperwork, this is my license, I've been studying, and I proved that I could do this well enough to have a license. So it will open many doors. In some countries, they will just say, okay, sign here, just take the unit training. So just learn what procedures are in force in the unit where you're going to work, and you're good to go. Some others will make selections, and you will have maybe more training to attend. It depends from one country to the other. And then again comes that important factor of local languages. As much as it sounds appealing when you go somewhere on vacation, say, oh wow, this is a cool airport, I'd like to be a controller here. Yeah, absolutely no problem. But in some countries, you will be required to speak local language, because in some countries, local languages are acceptable on the frequency, and some private pilots or some pilots, students or whatever, will not be required to speak English. So there are many factors to consider. And yes, again, Having an air traffic controller's license will open many doors, but I can't tell you, yes, you will have a job anywhere in the world. That's not true. For example, many people ask, can I get a job in the United States with my European controller's license or my Asian controller's license? The bottom line being no, because air traffic controllers in the US are only US citizens. So you will have to be to become a U.S. citizen before you're eligible for an air traffic controller position there. And there are many different regulations giving access to the position, giving access to the role. So again, it's a very good asset. Having an air traffic controller's license is very, very good. And again, there are some countries that will tell you straight away, yeah, okay, come in. We'll just train you on this particular tower or approach or ACC sector, and you're good to go. Some countries will tell you, yeah, you will need to take another course. You will need to take an extra course in this or to learn these regulations because they're not the same as in your country. That's also possible. And there are countries who will tell you, no, I'm sorry, sorry folks, this is really reserved for my citizens. All right. Okay. If there are any more questions, because I already overshot the slot by 4 minutes, so if there are any more questions, as usual, don't hesitate to send them in. I'll be happy to answer online, to try and point you in the direction where you need to go if you want to start a career. You can go back to the site where you found this link. And as I see, Fred, yes, indeed, it's difficult to move even between airports. Sometimes, paradoxically, it's easier to move to another country than to another unit in your own. That's sometimes a little bit weird. But regulations are there, and sometimes are applied a little bit more flexibly than in others, and I'm not anyone to judge, okay? This is not a judgment of values, but all right. To each their own, I'd say. Thank you for watching once again, and again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send them in. Thank you for watching. It's really a pleasure to have that appointment with you now every week. Really, really happy with especially, okay, the YouTube channel is a little bit more variable in between weeks, but I see that our other feeds really perform very well, and I see the same people coming back also on YouTube. I see the same people coming back. It's really, really pleasant. Next week we're going to make a little refresher about runway lighting. So if you're interested in the big Christmas tree that's around the airport, all the colors, all the meanings, be sure to be there next week. And the week after that, we even have a better surprise. But this one I'll keep as a surprise because this will be quite interesting. Maybe a little bit more controversial, but I like tickling people. Take care. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Madam Aviatrix. It's a pleasure to be there for you, and see you next week. Bye-bye.